Mr. Chair, before you start the hearing, we do have someone that has phoned in, I believe, to speak to one of the applications, but we don't have them on our speakers list. So when the application is called, they could press *6 to unmute themselves and *9 to raise their hand for the applicable application.
Thank you. All ready to go? I will begin. Good morning and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment of the City of Ottawa under the Planning Act. This video conference is also live streaming on YouTube. With me are my fellow panel members, Jocelyn Chandler, Stephen Lewis, Terrence Otto, and Martin Vervoort. My name is Fabian Poulin and I will be chairing this hearing today. The procedure for this hearing will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Committee members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition of each of the applications. Today, we'll hear oral submissions from any interested parties. Notice regarding minor variance applications, notwithstanding pre-consultation with city staff, is the responsibility of the applicant to identify all required variances accurately on the application. 2, 1, add a new variance or to increase extent of variance requested. Must be given in accordance with the Planning Act and may require the application to be recirculated for the next hearing date at a cost to the applicant at the prescribed fee. If an applicant amends their plans with no impact to the variances or to reduce the variances requested, recirculation may not be required. As part of the statutory declaration requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. This declaration must be on file today before we can hear the application. Without it, I may have to adjourn the application or administer an oath if necessary. Can the coordinator confirm that we have received all statutory declarations?
Mr. Chair, we've only received a statutory declaration for item 13032 Dunrobin Road.
Thank you very much. I'll administer the oath to all other applicants. The committee may ask for a brief description of the application, followed by questions from members and submissions from the public. Please address your comments to the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address. The committee limits presentations to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the discretion of the chair. And finally, before we begin, we have 2 items of business to address. Does any member present need to declare an interest in any of the applications that are before us today or that are on the agenda of another panel? Yes, Ms. Chandler? You have a declaration of interest in applications number 3 and 4?
Yes, number 3 and 4, that's 500 Oldenburg Avenue, number 4, and 3119 Vaughan Side Road, number 3.
Thank you very much. We don't have any minutes to adopt at this time. We will now hear applications scheduled for this hearing, and we'll first deal with items that may be adjourned. Is there anyone that wishes to adjourn their application today? I believe we have 4 items, one of which is Ms. Chandler's. We'll ask Ms. Chandler right now to, I guess, take a step back. And Madam Coordinator, when we're done with item number 3, can you please call her back? Item number 3 having to do with 3119 Vaughan Side Road. And Tracy Zander, are you available, Ms. Zander? Good morning.
Mr. Chair, committee members, nice to see everybody.
Nice to see you. And you're interested in adjourning your application today?
Yes, we just received the planning staff report yesterday. There are, if you've reviewed it, a number of things raised there. My clients would certainly like time to address those issues that are raised by staff. So we would be requesting an adjournment.
Okay, and would it be best to be sine die or would you prefer a date?
I think in this case, it would be best to be sine die. I do have to go back to some of the other experts to revisit their studies. So unfortunately, I wasn't able to connect with them yesterday to get a timeline. So I think a sine die request is appropriate here.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrigan, do you have any comments with respect to this application and the request for adjournment?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are agreeable to an adjournment sine die. I have noted to Tracy Zander that one of the major issues is that the well water on site is it isn't safe for human drinking at this time, just due to chloride, sulfide, water hardness, and total dissolved solids. And we don't think there's a better location, but if they would like to try with a new well, they're more than welcome to do so with an adjournment sine die.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. I'd like to ask the panel if they agree and would like to adjourn this application sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is adjourned sine die, Ms. Sanders. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Coordinator, could you ask Ms. Chandler to come back now, please? Good. Hi, Ms. Chandler, we're back. We're on to application number 5, a request for adjournment. Is Monsieur Paquette available? Mr. Paquette, are you available? Oh, I
Yes,
see you. There you are.
Yes, I am.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. I understand you are looking for an adjournment today.
Well, to tell you the truth, I know staff was asking that the staff suggested we adjourn it, but we like to think we addressed the issue yesterday, and yeah, we'd like to hear it actually.
Okay. I'll ask
Well, assuming that staff is, I mean, when we spoke to staff, we got the impression that they were okay with the suggested change we were making. We're trying to create 2 50-meter lots. And they suggested that because there's a ditch nearby, we'd be better off with a slightly wider lot on one of them, just to accommodate the 30-meter setback. The ditch is on the neighbor's property, so to create a sufficient building envelope width, they suggested we widen one of the lots. So we did that. We produced a new reference plan. So now we're proposing to create a 50-meter lot and a 55-meter lot. So
okay.
that's the essence of the change.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, are you, would you like to have this application adjourned?
Yes. Sorry, no. Through you, Mr. Chair, staff are satisfied that our concerns have been addressed by widening the lot. But we understand it's the committee's discretion whether this is heard today.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'd like to ask the panel to approve moving forward with this application. We'll hear it today. If all is in favor, all in favor? We're going to hear it today, Mr. Paquette. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Now moving on to application number 7. Mr. Shipman, are you available? It's having to do with 2392 Roger Stevens Drive. You're muted, Mr. Shipman.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Are you interested in having your application adjourned today?
Mr. Chair, I've had some discussions with Conservation Authority who requested the adjournment. I believe we've understand the concerns and hopefully have addressed them. We would like to be heard today.
Thank you. Mr. Lalonde, do you have any comments from the Conservation Authority's perspective? Mr. Lalonde? You're muted, Mr. Lalonde. There you are. Mr. Lalonde. Hi.
Sorry, yeah, my audio cut out the second that Jeff started speaking.
Okay.
But if you can hear me, I'm okay here.
We can hear you. Yep.
Sorry, I missed the last, I guess, 30 seconds of the conversation, but essentially the Conservation Authority is asking the adjournment request based on information we hadn't had a chance to speak with the applicant ahead of this meeting. Jeff and I touched base this morning. If they want to proceed with the application, we're not going to object to it and require the adjournment. The adjournment is more to provide ample time for us to discuss options, given some new information that's available to us. But I guess I'll leave it at that. And if there's anything I can answer, I'd be happy to.
Okay. I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan if you've got any comments on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I'd missed a little bit of that conversation just as my computer cut off here. In terms of the adjournment request, we are agreeable either way to it. I understand that it was for ensuring that there was an appropriate building location, but we are agreeable either way.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to ask panel members if they got any questions or comments with respect to this application being adjourned. Ms. Chandler?
Just so I'm clear, following the discussion you've had with the agent, you do believe there's now enough space on the lots for a development envelope? I presume this is related to some expected revisions to the floodplain mapping in that area?
Yeah, well, if I may through the chair, no, but the concern is related to the retained lot. Well, I guess we'll get into that, into the details of the application. But at this point, no, nothing's changed from my end, and there is still a concern. But that'll be, I think, up to the committee to decide on how they wish to proceed.
Okay, Mr. Vervoort, any questions or comments about the adjournment?
Sorry, well, I think if the applicant wants to proceed, then I think we can go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'm okay to hear it.
Okay, Mr. Otto?
Okay to hear it.
Okay, perfect. So consensus is that we'll hear your application, Mr. Shipman, in order once we get rolling.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last application request for adjournment is application number 8, having to do with 2760 Stagecoach Road. Ms. Zander, are you available?
Sorry, there's a little bit of lag as I get connected in there again.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, unfortunately, I will have to request an adjournment on this one as well. We were updating the environmental impact study and the mineral resource impact assessment. The MRIA has been provided back to staff. The EIS has not, just because of a busy workload, I guess, this season. I hope to have that back to city staff next week. And so I would request the opportunity to bring this back to the committee on September 1st. I think that's your first meeting in September. If you can accommodate that, I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Gordon, can you comment on behalf of the city? Is September 1st a good date for you?
Through the chair, we're not sure that September 1st will work, as the EIS revisions required necessitate a spring visit to the site to look at spring vegetation conditions. So I'm not sure how that can occur in time for September 1st.
Ms. Zander?
Yes, so there was field work done in April, May, and June this spring. The report that was submitted when we filed the application was submitted ahead of that, but the field work was completed this spring. So I'm confident in my discussion with the biologist that he will have sufficient data to meet the city's needs.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to adjourn this application till September 1st as requested by the applicant. All in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is adjourned to September the 1st. Thank you, Ms. Zander.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. So we'll now proceed in order, and just as a matter of administration, item number 4, which is item having to do with 500 Oldenburg Avenue, will be put last on the agenda, only because Ms. Chandler will have to be excused at that time for us to hear that. Moving on to application number 1, having to do with 3032 Dunrobin Road. Mr. Zlepnig, are you available?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Morning.
I don't need to administer an oath because you've provided us with statutory declaration with respect to the sign. Can you please provide us with a brief description of your application today?
Yes, the property is located at 3032 Dunrobin Road, just I guess northeast of Thomas Dolan Parkway. The overall area based on the roll is approximately 36.8 hectares. Draft sketch was done by Annis O'Sullivan, as is slightly larger than that at 42.85. Part of the area, roughly 15 hectares, is provincially significant wetlands, and the parcel of land at 3032 Dunrobin Road is subject to a purchase and sale agreement, and my wife and I own the property abutting the wetlands to the I guess sort of the south, if you will, and it's plan 4M 1334. It includes pond and wetland areas as well too, and it butts the property that's proposed to be severed, and it would be aligned or merged into the lot number 1 on plan 4M 1334, which is owned personally. That's the intent, and we've reviewed it both with staff and Mississippi Conservation Authority to see if there was any concerns, and there was no concerns expressed. So that would be the purpose of the severance and the conveyance. The retained lot would basically be lands outside of the wetland area, and it's currently a hay field at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Harrigan, can you please present some facts on behalf of the city, please?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with this application. It's fairly straightforward to consolidate ecological features and functions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zlepnig, are you aware of the one condition that's on this, if this is approved today on this application?
Yes, there was an undertaking by our solicitor, and I reviewed it with him yesterday, and we have no concerns with the condition.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments, or concerns, Mr. Revort?
No concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Lewis?
None.
Mr. Otto? Ms. Chandler?
None, thank you.
So there doesn't seem to be any questions or concerns. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Zlepnig. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll move on to application number 2, having to do with 4220 Upper Dwyer Hill Road. Ms. Kingsley, are you available? Or Kingsbury, excuse me. Good morning. I don't see Ms. Kingsbury. I see a Cheryl Caswell, an owner of the property. Is Ms. Kingsbury here? I don't see her as an attendee. Ms. Caswell, are you able to address this application?
I think so. My lawyer, Scott, is supposed to be here.
Okay. I have an agent on file, Julia Kingsbury. Is she your agent?
Yes, so she is Scott's, she works in his office, yeah.
I see.
But-
Okay.
I probably can answer questions.
Okay. Since there hasn't been a statutory declaration filed, I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting on your property. Can you take that oath today?
Yeah.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time?
I do.
You swear? Thank you.
Yes.
Please proceed and provide us with a brief description of your application.
So the,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I think I see Mr. Murray on the list of people.
I see him down here too. Mr. Murray, are you prepared to address this or is? Ms.
Yes,
Caswell?
I'm trying to get on, but I can't make
Okay.
this gizmo work.
Okay. Well, we can hear you, Mr. Murray. There you are.
Okay, all right. I think I got it now.
Okay. Please proceed if you'd like.
The application is a surplus farm dwelling type of application. Ms. Caswell has entered into an agreement with the neighboring farmer for the sale of the agricultural land. And the objective is that that tillable agricultural land would be conveyed to the farmer, and Ms. Caswell would retain the balance of the property, consisting of approximately 13 hectares, a large part of which is wetland. And of course, her home is there along with barn and other outbuildings.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gordon, can you make some comments on behalf of the city, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns subject to the conditions outlined in the report.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, are you aware of those conditions that are present for this application?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chairman, and there were a couple of comments I wanted to make in regard to those. In particular, the item number 3, the farmland portion that's going to the farmer already has 2 separate entrances directly onto Upper Dwyer Hill Road. So there will not be a shared driveway between the retained and severed portions. So I don't think we need to deal with, or I don't think the committee needs to impose the condition number 3 that addresses that. There are already separate entrances for both the parcels. As a matter of fact, the farmland portion of approximately 51 hectares has 2 entrances, and that's over and above the so-called shared driveway that's shown on the sketch. So Mr. Hill will have adequate access without that. And number 4, I think I understand the gist of that, but I can advise that the one tiny little building in the northeast corner of the portion that Ms. Caswell will retain, that tiny little building is essentially falling down and is going to be removed. So there's not going to be much of a problem with the lot line clearance, the setback under the zoning bylaw created by that. The building is now totally unusable in any event. If that's not the building that is referred to in the condition number 4, then the only other one in that vicinity is the one that will go with the farmland, and immediately to the south. To the south of that southeast, I guess, southwest, is the building that Ms. Caswell will retain. And I'm told that those buildings are approximately 75 feet apart. So that the new boundary line will bisect that distance and thereby allow for well more than the minimum that is required on a side yard setback for this zone. So again, I don't think that that condition is appropriate under all of those circumstances. Unfortunately, I didn't see that condition. That hadn't been discussed by me and the planner beforehand. He'd never raised that. I didn't see it until yesterday, and I've had no opportunity to review it with him. But that's the situation in terms of those two proposed conditions. They're simply not necessary under these circumstances.
Okay. Mr. Gordon, any comments about removing condition number 3 and 4?
So yes, Mr. Chair, with respect to number 3, we could not get clarity from, I believe it was someone in Mr. Murray's office about how that shed that will go with the agricultural land would be accessed. So that was put in there because we didn't have clarity, but given that there's access will be from the agricultural parcel, then condition number 3 can be removed. But with respect to condition number 4, the issue isn't around side yard setbacks under zoning. It's a condition from the building code office, and that's to do with fire separation. So that I would request that is maintained.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gordon. I'd like to ask the panel for their questions, comments, or concerns. Mr. Otto.
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
I'm none.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort.
Just a question, like, I'm not sure condition number 4 is needed if the agricultural lands are going to be rezoned and there's like no construction allowed on them. I'm not sure what the concern is in this particular case. Maybe we can get a bit more clarification from Mr. Gordon just on that point.
Mr. Gordon.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I did speak to the commenting staff from Building Code Services, and I did raise that point, but the concern isn't just residential development. It's also the fact that there is an existing structure that could store any number of things for an agricultural operation, and other construction could occur there related to livestock.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Chandler.
I don't have any concerns, but I tend towards leaving the condition in regarding the setbacks.
Okay, thank you. I tend to go along with Ms. Chandler. I'd like to leave the condition number 4 in place with respect to Building Code Services. But I do also agree that item number 3 can be removed of the conditions. So to that end, I'd like to ask the panel to approve this application with 3 conditions, condition 1, 2, and 4. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Caswell. Mr. Murray, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, number 3 has been adjourned. And we're on to item number 5. Number 5 is having to do with 1501 March Valley Road. Mr. Paquette, are you available? You're muted, Mr. Paquette. Good morning.
Good morning again. Sorry for the lag there.
That's not a problem. Because we did not get a statutory declaration, I need to administer an oath concerning the sign posting. Can you take that oath now?
Yes, I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes, I can. It was posted.
Thank you very much. I believe there's one item of administrative nature. The application B00189, the frontage is changed from 50 meters to 55 meters. Is that correct, Mr. Paquette?
Yes, that's the change we discussed and made to our reference plan yesterday.
Great. Please proceed and provide us with a brief description of your application.
Okay, I don't know if staff could put up that planning status report I sent to them yesterday on the screen. If they can, I'll walk through it. If not, I'll well, okay, that's that's the revised reference plan. I also sent you a document called Planning Status Report, which lays the background, a little bit more context. If that's possible, I'd like to see. Yeah, perfect. Now we're in business. Thank you. Anyways, I always start these things by trying to locate the property. It's on March Road, just south of Cameron Harvey Drive. It's 14.2 hectares. And the air photo at the bottom there outlines the property. If you go to the next page, there is a ditch that runs on the south side of the property. It's yesterday we scaled it off. It looks like it's 3 meters on the neighbor's property to the south. Next page. It's general rural property for Schedule B, the official plan. Next page, please. And that policies, the official plan permit 0.8 hectare lots, provided the retained has a minimum of 10 hectares for the retained portion, which we'll be able to meet as the property is 14.2 hectares area. Next page. The zoning is rural countryside, as shown on this sketch. Next page. And the zoning, and you could scroll down to the next page as well. The zoning permits, actually you can go to the previous page. Yeah, just showing the standards. We'll be able to meet those standards. So there's both the lots we're proposing to create will be fully compliant with the zoning, including the next page. Yeah, so this is the one that deals with the ditch. So the city wants to protect for 30 meters from high water mark or 15 from top of bank. And that was that discussion we had yesterday where initially we had a 50 meter lot closest to the ditch. They're worried that the building envelope was going to be too narrow. If you take into account 5 meter interior side yard setback and then the 30 meters, that would only leave you 15 width wise for a building envelope. The reality is that the ditch is actually 3 meters off. So right off the top, we'd be working with 18. But in just to accommodate planning staff and to give everybody a little bit more comfort, we increased the lot width to 55 meters, which effectively would give you 30. Excuse me. We give you 23 meters of building envelope. If you go to the reference plan, the proposed reference plan, yeah, so you can see that part 1 is a little wider, and staff did some good work in identifying the average house width in the area in the 18 to 20 meter range. So we're going to end up with 23 meters, and my client is satisfied that the houses he's got in mind for this part 1 would fit that envelope without any difficulty and give effectively a very rich setback on the south side and a normal setback on the north side of part 1. So that's the that's the story behind this application. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Paquette. I'd like to ask Mr. Gordon from the city to provide us with his comments.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. We don't see any concerns with the application subject to the conditions within the report, with the exception of condition number 5, which can now be removed.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon. Mr. Paquette, have you reviewed the conditions of this application?
Yes, we have with my clients, and we're okay with the conditions with that change that Mr. Gordon just referred to.
Thank you, Mr. Paquette. I'd like to ask panel now for their questions or comments. Mr. Otto.
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Mr. Lewis.
Support the application, thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler.
I have no concerns, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort.
No, I'm fine with the application as amended and the deletion of condition 5.
Thank you very much. To that end, I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application with the removal of condition number 5. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Paquette. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to application number 6, having to do with 989 William Mooney Road. Kiana Simmons, are you available? Ms. Simmons?
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Simmons. I need to administer an oath concerning the signposting on the property. Available to take that oath today?
I am.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing, as instructed, and was clearly visible and legible during that time. Do you swear?
I do, yes.
Please provide us with a brief summary of your application.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kiana Simmons, and I'm joined today by my colleague Jordan Jackson on behalf of Novatech. Yep, there's my presentation, thanks. We are representing the owners of 989 William Mooney Road, and we are going to be discussing a lot line adjustment today. So the owner wishes to convey a portion of his property to the abutting landowner to the south, known municipally as 949 William Mooney Road. The property currently exists as an undeveloped, irregularly shaped parcel with a lot area of 3.41 hectares in the city's rural area. Next slide, please. So our client is looking to sever 2.61 hectares of land off the rear of the property to convey this land to the neighbors at 949 William Mooney Road. The retained lands will have a frontage of 60 meters on William Mooney Road and a lot area of 0.8 hectares and a rear lot line that matches up with the neighboring property to the north. The revised lot lines will regularize the shape of 989 William Mooney Road, which will retain an existing right to construct a single detached home. The increase in size of 949 William Mooney Road will support continued agricultural use. After conveying the land, both retained piece and the lands being added to will meet the minimum lot area and lot width requirements of the rural countryside zone. We've reviewed the comments received by staff and have no concerns with the standard conditions. This concludes my presentation, and Jordan and I are happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simmons. Mr. Gordon, do you have any comments from the city?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The planning department has no concerns with the application subject to the conditions in our report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vervoort, do you have any questions or comments?
None for me, thank you. Looks fine.
Thank you. Ms. Chandler?
I have no concerns, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
No concerns, thanks.
Mr. Otto?
No concern, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Ms. Simmons. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to application number 7, having to do with 2392 Roger Stevens Drive. Mr. Shipman, are you available? You're muted, sir.
Morning,
There
Mr.
you
Chair.
are. Good morning. I need to administer an oath concerning the signposting. Can you take that oath today?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please proceed with a brief summary of your application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee is likely familiar with the three severances we previously obtained on this property, 273, 274, and 275. The purpose of the subject applications is to create another 2 residential lots on the subject property. These would be the last 2 available before we get into the floodplain. As part of our, the lots are unusually large for village lots. Again, as the committee may recall, our first 3, we had to essentially double the size to meet groundwater requirements in respect to nitrate dissolution rates, that type of thing, under the provincial guidelines for private septic systems and their effluents, essentially having to treat the surrounding land as if it's all fully developed into a subdivision lot. So under those premises, we had to essentially double the size of those lots to 0.75 hectares, which is what we've applied on these 2 lots for that same size in order to overcome any potential issues that might come up. We have consulted with our engineer, and she has indicated that the size would be appropriate. As you may be aware, these lots, proposed lots, all fall within the North Gore Village boundary, which is essentially designated for development under the North Gore Secondary Plan. So we're currently have restrictions in respect to the floodplain. The current floodplain is actually a little bit more restrictive than appears on the image that's up on the screen. We are probably as far as we can go westerly under the current mapping. The topographic survey I have submitted along with the application demonstrates that the 2 proposed lots, as well as the retained parcel, would have sufficient room above the floodplain in order to develop a residential dwelling on each lot. Now I understand in consultation with the Conservation Authority that the floodplain is to change in there, and there's some concern in that regard. So again, we provided a detailed topographic survey, more detailed than the one you have up on the screen. And the Conservation Authority has had an opportunity to look at. I believe that they're of the opinion that the severed lots would have sufficient area above the floodplain or any future floodplain. It's still up in the air what it is, but we're sufficiently high, particularly at the front of the severed lots, to develop a dwelling and septic system, that type of thing, above where we think the floodplain might come to. This could leave the retained land under the floodplain. If it is subject to a change that's high enough, it could leave the lots or the retained parcel ineligible for a building permit. The applicant is well aware of that. The purpose, his purpose for the retained land is to simply farm it as cropland, similar to the scenario that we would have under, say, a surplus farm dwelling severance, where in this case, where we've maximized the developable area within the village boundary by creating the severances, and the retained farmland would simply be crop production farmland in the future, ineligible for a building permit, which the applicant is fully aware of. In order to address any concerns in respect to the retained parcel, we're suggesting notices on title, that type of thing, Were the floodplain to change, I presume that the open space zoning would follow it, which would make it very apparent as to the developability of the retained parcel, and perhaps a notice on title would also be appropriate. Other than that, our two lots meet the current requirements, both in terms of the official plan, zoning bylaw, and current floodplain restrictions.
Thank you, Mr. Shipman. Are you okay with all the 6 conditions that are there on your application?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In respect to the road widening condition, which is condition number 4, I just point out that under the previous 3 lots we had approved, there was a road widening condition across the severed and retained lands. It also included a site triangle down at the easterly extremity of the property. So that condition has already been satisfied. Obviously, it's up to your discretion whether you want to leave it in to ensure that the proper road widenings are allowed. The only other comment I would make in respect to proposed conditions is condition number 6 is asking for a geotechnical report. I presume that's with respect to the unstable slopes that are identified immediately adjacent to Stevens Creek, which is well beyond the proposed lots and certainly well beyond development envelopes on them. So that, I mean, this isn't that onerous a condition. It wasn't there on our last 3 approved lots. You know, should the committee decide that that's necessary, I don't think it's that onerous a condition. I just think it's kind of redundant and that we're nowhere near the creek in those unstable slopes.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Mr. Harrigan to comment on behalf of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the planning department, we have minor concerns, no concerns with this application. As the applicant had mentioned, the retained land, it can still resume the farming operation, even though it may not be developable land in the future because of the floodplain. So because of that, we are acceptable with the proposed severances as they are. In regards to the geotechnical investigation report, our senior engineer has requested this because of organic soils as well as the unstable slope being within the area. So the organic soils, to my understanding, affect these 2 lots more so than the previous 3. And because of that, we are asking the geotechnical to be included in there as well too. In regards to the road widening condition, if the applicant can provide just evidence that it has been met entirely, that satisfies the condition entirely as well too.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask Mr. Lalonde from the Conservation Partners to have some comments.
Thank you. If I may, through the chair, I'll phrase it as this. Under the current regulations, the applications of severed lots, there would not necessarily be any objections to the application. So the Conservation Authority does not object to the applications. Given that we are working on updated mapping to Stevens Creek, it's been identified, at least at the stages that we're at, that there is a concern or a risk that floodplain mapping may increase in the future. And with the additional information that Mr. Shipman has provided us, we are comfortable that the 2 lots to be severed would have a building envelope that would be higher or at least available outside the floodplain. Again, our numbers are still to be confirmed, but we're getting fairly close to finalizing that mapping for the end of the year. So we are comfortable with the lots as proposed, but given the updated grading plan provided and our I guess estimates at this point, there is a concern that the lot to be retained that's being used for agricultural purposes wouldn't have a viable envelope for development. That being said, agricultural is a use that is permitted in the floodplain, so we're not going to object to that being used. This is more of an opportunity to provide that information and kind of go into this application with your eyes open in terms of what may be restricted on the property. And if there is a concern from the committee creating a lot that may have restrictions in the future, that's going to be up to you to decide. But we wanted to provide that information for full transparency, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. In terms of the comments for slope stability, that wasn't raised by our office from a perspective of the site, but I can see how it applies to the retained land. So we wouldn't have an issue with that, as well as the organic soils that are present on the lot. So we would agree with those conditions being in place.
Thank you, Ms. Lalonde. I'd like to ask the panel now for their questions or comments. Mr. Vervoort.
Yes, just with respect to the possibility that the retained land might not be developable, I suggest that we add an additional condition that there be a notice on the retained lands. So if those lands are sold, that the purchaser might be aware that they may not be able to develop that property. And the other thing I thought, Mr. Shipman, maybe you can tell me the status of the previous applications, 273, 274, and 275, because it seems to me that those should be finalized before these are, so we don't end up with two parcels, sort of orphan parcels with a big gap in between. Because this is sort of subdivision by stealth here, but it does make sense that those other three applications be approved before these are. So there's some orderly development. I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, Mr. Shipman and Mr. Harrigan.
First, we'll go with Mr. Shipman.
Thank you. I believe those three lots are they're either have clear conditions or are very close to clear conditions. We have no problem with a condition in an approval that those three lots are cleared before these within the year available to us under the conditions for this application. So I don't see a problem with that. And as far as notice on title goes, that's just fine.
Thank you.
Ms. Chandler, any questions or comments?
No, I would agree with Mr. Vervoort's comments, but I don't have anything further now that I understand about the work that's been done to see what the new floodplain, how it may impact the lots. It has been looked at, so no, I don't have anything additional to that.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Support the application, take number 4 out, leave 6 in, and with the notice.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, do you have any questions or comments? You're muted, sir. I didn't hear anything. You were muted. Still muted.
How
You're
about
good.
that? Now, support
Yes.
the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would now like to ask
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
I missed something in my previous comments with respect to the conditions. If I may, I'm very sorry to interrupt. The condition number 3 in respect to grading plans, it mentions both the severed and retained portions. I think if we end up in a situation where the floodplain changes and the retained land is indeed non-developable, we would not be able to meet the condition requiring a grading plan on the retained portion. So we request that be that portion of that condition be struck.
Okay. Any comments, Mr. Harrigan?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, so I was just reading the final wording of that again. We are agreeable to have the graded drainage plan apply only to the separate lots. With the understanding, though, that if it does turn out that there is a building envelope that is possible on the retained land, that at building permitting stage, they would have to do a graded drainage plan.
Okay. And you're good with that, Mr. Shipman?
I am.
Okay. So I'd like to ask the panel now.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Who am I missing?
I do believe that there's an amendment that needs to be made to the applicant's name.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm sorry. I believe the paperwork thus far is mentioning Growerdale. It should be Gowerdale, Gowerdale Farms Limited or Ltd.
Okay. So with that change and changes to the road widening condition removed, that the grading and drainage plan be requirements be removed and only apply to the severed lots. And if the lot is developable on the retained land, that it be included there as well. And that notice be put on title that the retained lands are not developable. So I'd like to, am I missing something, Mr. Vervoort? Because you're muted.
My apologies. I would just add that that it also be a condition that the previous 3 applications be completed first.
Okay.
Be 273, 274, and 275.
Okay. With that, I'd like to ask the panel if they approve this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Shipman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the last application is number 8, but I believe we've adjourned that one. So therefore, Ms. Chandler, thank you very much for your help today. And we'll move on to application number 4.
Have a good day.
Thank you. And we're going on to application number 4, 500 Oldenburg Avenue. Zayed Hassan, are you available, sir?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. I need to administer an oath concerning the signposting on your property. Are you available to take that today?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies to be for the prescribed number of days before the hearing as instructed and was clearly visible and legible during that time? Do you swear?
Yes, I swear.
Thank you. Please provide us with a brief summary of your application, sir.
Mr. Chair, if I may, this is Nico Church of Photon.
Hi.
We are the agents for Mr. Hassan, so we'll be happy to take over the presentation.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I begin, I would like to bring an amendment to the notice. We've made note of it to the Committee of Adjustment staff prior to the hearing. On page 2, paragraph 2 of the notice, it notes that the land to be severed is shown as part 1 on registered plan 4M 1674. That's not correct because plan 4M 1674 is the registered plan of subdivision that doesn't show the lot line adjustment that we're proposing. The part 1 is shown on a draft reference plan that was filed with the committee. So we're proposing that the notice should instead say that the land to be severed shown as part 1 on the draft R plan filed with the committee.
Thank you. Great.
So with that in mind, I'll proceed with my presentation. So our application today is for lot line adjustment between 2 blocks within a plan of subdivision that is currently under development by Kaivan. The subdivision is located at the western edge of the village of Richmond on the north side of Perth Street. Next slide, please. So the affected blocks are, the slide before that, sorry. The affected blocks are near the southwest corner of the subdivision at the intersection of Perth Street to the south, and to the west is Oldenburg Avenue, where a traffic circle is planned to be constructed in the future. So block 246 is in the western portion of your screen. It fronts onto Oldenburg Avenue and is known municipally as 500 Oldenburg. And block 274 fronts onto Perth Street to the south and is known municipally as 6357 Perth Street. Next slide, please. So the proposed lot line adjustment is between these 2 blocks where rear lane townhomes are proposed to be constructed. The lot line adjustment is requested to convey land from block 246, the western block, to block 274 to the south. And that's to accommodate a corner dwelling model designed for the westernmost unit of block 274. The original block configuration in the registered M plan didn't take into account this anticipated corner unit design. So the lot line adjustment will permit Kaivan to use their standard corner unit model in this location. So this is a lot line adjustment that is purely technical in nature. It will allow the unit to have a corner facing porch and a walkway and entrance from the side as per Kaivan's standard model. This will provide a little bit more space for the unit's residents and make better use of a large piece of land that won't be developed with homes between the two blocks. So it will allow for animation of a facade that would otherwise be largely blank. The design will add some variety to the block as well in proximity to the future traffic circle. It takes only a small amount of the otherwise huge yard of block 246. The part one only has an area of 25.2 square meters. So no one is negatively impacted by this lot line adjustment. So looking to the next slide, please. This proposed siting plan shows the result of the proposed lot line adjustment. So unit one at the very west, you can see the porch that is on the western facade, as well as a walkway connecting the porch to the right-of-way to the south. Next slide, please. And this is just a visual illustration of Kaivan's rear lane townhouse models. You'll see the unit to the left of the screen shows a porch as well as a balcony that is facing into the side yard. This is what we're proposing. So the lot line adjustment will provide just a little bit more breathing space for those elements. So with that in mind, going to the next slide, we'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have at this time. And we thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harrigan, can you please comment on behalf of the city?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, the planning department has no concerns with this application. However, we would like to note to the applicant that the original plan of subdivision had incorporated an urban design element to have all of their buildings fronting onto Perth Street. And this change to a side yard entrance isn't in line with that original urban design elements. However, the planning department does recognize that that facade will face onto the roundabout, the traffic circle. And as such, it's not as grievous as some of the other lot designs might have been if they implemented this design. So in summary, we have no concerns.
Thank you very much. Mr. Church, are you aware of the conditions that this application has?
Yes, we are aware of the conditions. We've reviewed them and we have no concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Otto, do you have any questions or comments about this application?
Oh, no concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Support.
Thank you. Mr. Vervoort?
No concerns. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the committee for approval of this application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Your application is approved, Mr. Church and Mr. Hassan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There being no further business, I'd like to call this meeting to an end. Thank you very